The richest man in the region fell to his knees and shouted that he would give all his gold to anyone who could heal him. The barefoot boy, ignored by everyone, stepped forward, and when he touched him, the boy turned pale. The onlookers held their breath. No one was prepared to recognize who he really was. Subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and comment where in the world you're watching from, because now I'm going to tell you everything. The screen door slammed behind Dr. Evans, the sound like a gunshot in the heavy afternoon quiet. Hank Miller didn't get up from his leather chair. He stared at the dust motes dancing in a sunbeam. "Say it plain," Hank said, his voice a dry rustle. The doctor wiped his forehead with a handkerchief. "There is nothing more to say, Hank. The men from Houston said it. The men from Dallas said it. My own books say it. We don't know what it is. Your body, it's attacking itself. The pain will get worse. The weakness will get worse." Hank's knuckles were white on the arms of his chair. "You're telling me money can't fix this?" "No, sir," Dr. Evans said softly. "It cannot." For a long time, Hank said nothing. The clock on the wall ticked 3 times, 4 times, 5 times. The pain was a fire in his bones, a constant hum he could not turn off. He had spent 58 years building an empire of dirt and dollars, convincing himself he owned everything in Dust Creek. Now he could not even own the next minute without agony. He tapped the heel of his expensive boot 3 times on the polished floor. It was a habit from his younger days, a useless little rhythm before a gamble. "Thank you, doctor," Hank said, his voice final. It was not a thank you. It was a dismissal. When he was alone, Hank pushed himself to his feet. A wave of dizziness made him grab the desk. He looked out the big window at his town, his land, his bank building across the square. All of it was worth less to him now than a single cool, pain-free breath. The sun was a hammer on the dusty town square. It was so hot the air shimmered over the packed dirt. People moved slowly, if they moved at all. Then Hank Miller walked into the center of the square. He did not look like the richest man for 100 miles. He walked stiffly, each step a visible effort. His face was pale and slick with sweat under his cream-colored hat. Everyone stopped to watch. Seeing Hank Miller in pain was like seeing a mountain sway. Hank stopped. He looked at the faces of the people he owned mortgages on, the people who worked in his stores, the people who feared him. His voice, when it came, did not boom. It was strained, but it carried. "I am sick," he shouted. The square was so quiet you could hear a horse stamp its foot down the street. "The doctors cannot help me, so I make a deal, right here, right now. A deal for anyone." He took a ragged breath. The fire in his bones flared and he almost fell. He steadied himself. "Whoever makes me well," Hank declared, "will get it all. Every gold bar in my safe, my fortune, all of it. You hear me? All of it for my health." A murmur rippled through the crowd. All of Hank Miller's gold. It was a sum they could not even picture. From that moment, the town tried. For days, people came to the big house on the hill. Mrs. Henderson brought a bitter tea made from a root her grandmother used. Pastor James laid his hands on Hank's head and prayed loud prayers to the heavens. A man from El Paso brought a small machine that buzzed and sparked. Hank let them all try. He drank the tea. He bowed his head for the prayers. He let the machine buzz on his skin. Nothing worked. The hope in the town turned back to dust. Hank, desperate, came back to the square every afternoon. He would just stand there, a monument to his own crumbling body, as if waiting for a miracle he no longer believed in. On the 4th day, a small boy watched from the edge of the dry grass. His name was Billy. He stood beside his mother, Sarah, who held his shoulder tightly. Her fingers were like thin, strong wires. Billy wore a faded gray shirt that was too big for him. He was barefoot. He watched the tired people walk away from Hank Miller. He saw the angry disappointment on their faces. He saw the way Hank's shoulders sank lower each day. "That man is very sick, Mom," Billy whispered. Sarah's grip tightened. "I know he is, baby. Don't stare." "But no one is helping him," Billy said. His voice was very quiet, but clear. "Some people can't be helped," Sarah said. Her voice was tight. She tried to pull him back toward their small house on the outskirts of town. "Come on, let's go home." Billy did not move. He watched as Hank slowly, painfully, knelt on the hot ground in the middle of the square, the mighty Hank Miller on his knees. The crowd was silent, just watching the end of something. Billy slipped from his mother's grasp. Billy, no! Sarah's whisper was sharp with fear. But Billy was already walking. His small, bare feet made no sound on the dust. He walked past the legs of the crowd, into the open circle where the rich man knelt, head bowed. Hank felt a shadow fall over him. He looked up, expecting another grown-up with another false hope. He saw a dirty, too thin boy in an oversized shirt. The crowd stirred. Someone let out a short, surprised laugh. It was not a mean laugh, but a laugh of disbelief. This was the town's last hope, a child? Billy looked at Hank's face, twisted with pain. He saw the deep fear in the man's eyes, a fear Hank would never say out loud. Billy's mother stood frozen at the edge of the crowd, her hand over her mouth. Billy took one more step forward. He looked at the richest man in Dust Creek, kneeling in the dirt. "I accept the deal," Billy said. The laughter from the crowd died as quickly as it started. The sight of the small, serious boy standing before the kneeling giant was too strange to laugh at for long. Hank Miller stared up at Billy. The pain made his vision swim. "Boy," he grunted, the word rough and tired. "Go back to your mother. This is not a game." Billy did not go. He looked at Hank's hand, which was trembling on his knee. "You promise all your gold?" Billy asked, his voice clear in the silent square. "I said it," Hank replied, too weary to be angry. "I said it to the whole town." Billy nodded, as if this was a normal business talk. He took one more small step forward. He reached out his own small hand. "Billy, don't you touch him!" Sarah's voice was a raw scream from the edge of the crowd. She tried to push forward, but people were packed tight, watching. Billy's fingers touched the back of Hank's large, shaking hand. The moment Billy's skin touched his, Hank gasped. It was not a gasp of pain. It was a shock of cold, like jumping into a clear lake on a burning day. A wave of coolness rushed up his arm, then flooded through his whole body. The deep, fiery ache in his bones began to fade. It sputtered and went out, like a candle pinched between two fingers. The weakness that had filled his muscles for months simply drained away. Hank's wide eyes looked at the boy. Billy's face had gone chalk white. The boy squeezed his eyes shut tight. His small hand gripped Hank's harder, and then it was over. Hank felt strong. He felt like himself again. He drew in a deep, full breath, and it did not hurt. He stood up, straight and tall, rising to his full height without a single twinge of pain. A loud murmur rose from the crowd. They saw the color return to Hank's face. They saw him stand up strong. The sickness was gone. Hank looked at his own hands, turning them over. He felt incredible. He looked down at the boy. "How did you?" Billy let go of Hank's hand. The boy stumbled back one step, then another. His pale blue eyes were wide and scared. He opened his mouth as if to speak, but instead, a harsh, dry cough shook his small body. It was a deep cough that sounded too big for him. He coughed again, doubling over. "Billy!" Sarah finally broke through the crowd. She ran to her son and caught him just as his knees buckled. She sank to the dusty ground, cradling him in her lap. "No, no, 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 baby, look at me." Billy's head lolled against her arm. His skin was pale and damp. He tried to focus on his mother's face. "It's cold, Mom," he whispered, his voice thin and raspy. "I feel so cold inside." Sarah held him close, rocking back and forth. Her tears fell onto his hair. She looked from her sick child up to the man who now stood over them, healthy and whole. Hank was confused. What happened to him?" he asked. "Is he faint from the heat?" Sarah's head snapped up. The fear in her eyes was gone, burned away by pure 20-year-old anger. "What happened?" Her voice cut through the buzzing crowd, sharp and clear. "You happened. You gave it to him." Hank shook his head, not understanding. "I gave him nothing. He touched me." "He took it," Sarah cried, holding Billy tighter. "He took your sickness into himself. He always does this. He can't help it." She was sobbing now, her words choked with fury and grief. "And you of all people." Hank knelt down, his new strength feeling awkward and wrong. "I don't know this boy. Who is he?" Sarah looked him right in the eyes. The whole town was listening, holding its breath. "He's your son," she said. Every word was like a stone dropped into silence. "The baby I had 20 years ago. The sickly baby you told me to leave at the hospital. The one you said would ruin your perfect name if anyone ever found out." Hank's face went blank. The world seemed to tilt sideways. He looked at the boy in Sarah's arms, the messy brown hair, the shape of the eyes. He saw it now, beneath the dirt and the pallor, his own face from a long time ago. "That's not possible," Hank whispered, but the truth was crashing down on him. "His name is Billy," Sarah spat, her voice trembling. "My son, you just gave him your disease." Hank reached a hand out, not knowing if he meant to touch the boy or the mother. Sarah flinched back, shielding Billy with her whole body. "Don't you touch him. You've done enough." She gathered her strength and stood, lifting Billy into her arms. He was small for 9 years old, but he was a dead weight, limp and shivering. Without another word, without looking at the stunned face of Hank Miller or the whispering town, Sarah turned and walked away, carrying her sick child home. Hank remained on his knees in the dirt. He was healed. He had never felt better in his life. But as he watched Sarah disappear down the dusty street, a cold, heavy feeling settled in his chest, a feeling his new health could not touch. From the shadowed porch of the old saloon, a man in a neat suit watched it all. His name was Clyde Granger. He did not care about family drama. He had seen the impossible. He had seen a dying man healed by a touch. He had seen power, and he knew the people he worked for would pay a very large sum for it. He took a small notebook from his pocket and began to write. Sarah's arms ached by the time she reached their small house. It was a simple place at the end of a dirt road with paint peeling under the Texas sun. She kicked the door open and carried Billy straight to his narrow bed. He was shaking. She pulled a thin blanket over him, then another from her own bed. He kept shivering. "It's so cold, Mom," Billy whispered, his teeth chattering. "It's inside my bones. It's a cold hurt." Sarah put her hand on his forehead. It was icy and damp. This was different. When he took the fever from the neighbor's dog last year, he had been burning up. When he took old Mr. Miller's arthritis, he just got stiff. This was a deep, frozen sickness. Hank Miller's sickness turned inside out in her boy's body. "I'm here, baby. I'm right here," she said, twisting the simple silver ring on her finger round and round. She was filling a bowl with cool water to wipe his face when a heavy knock shook the front door. One knock, then 2 more. Solid and sure. Sarah froze. She knew that knock. She walked slowly to the door and opened it just a crack. Hank Miller stood on her porch. He looked out of place, like a mountain in a flower bed. He held his cream-colored hat in his hands. He looked healthy. He looked strong. "Sarah," he said. "Go away, Hank. I need to see him. I need to understand." "You understand just fine," Sarah said, her voice low and tight. "You got what you wanted. You're well. Now leave us alone." "He's sick because of me." "You figured that out, did you?" Sarah shot back. "Took you long enough. It only took you 20 years to care that he's sick." Hank's jaw tightened. "I didn't know about any of this." "You knew about the baby," Sarah said. "You told me he was a problem. You told me to let the doctors deal with him and come home. You said a sick child didn't fit the life you were building." The old words spilled out, fresh and sharp as broken glass. "So you deal with your life. We are not your problem." She tried to shut the door. Hank's hand shot out and stopped it. He wasn't being rough, but his strength was undeniable. "Please," he said. The word sounded strange in his mouth. "Just let me see his face." From the bedroom, a weak coughing sound reached them. Sarah closed her eyes for a second. When she opened them, the anger was still there, but it was tired. "You look from the doorway. You do not come in. You do not touch him. You look, and then you go." Hank nodded. She opened the door wider and led him to the small bedroom. Billy lay under the pile of blankets, only his pale face visible. He was awake, his eyes watching the doorway. He saw his mother. Then he saw the tall man behind her, the man from the square. Hank stared. He saw the curve of the boy's cheek, the way his hair fell over his forehead. He saw himself. A lump formed in his throat, hard and unfamiliar. "Hello, Billy," Hank said quietly. Billy just looked at him. He did not smile. He did not frown. He was too busy trying not to shiver. After a moment, he asked, "Does your bones not hurt anymore?" "No," Hank said. "They don't hurt at all." "That's good," Billy whispered, and then a small, tired sigh escaped him. He closed his eyes, worn out from just talking. Hank stood there for a full minute, just watching the boy breathe. Then, without a word, he turned and walked out of the house. Sarah followed him, shutting the bedroom door softly. On the porch, Hank put his hat back on. He looked at the ground, then at Sarah. "What does he need? A doctor? Medicine? Tell me what to get." "He needs to not have your sickness," Sarah said. "You got a cure for that? He takes it in, and he has to fight it. That's how it works. All we can do is wait." Hank nodded slowly. He looked lost. I will come back tomorrow." "Don't," Sarah said. But Hank was already walking down the path to his big, shiny truck. He did not look back. Across town, Clyde Granger sat at the counter of the Dust Creek Diner. He pushed his empty coffee cup toward the waitress, a woman named Brenda with kind eyes. "That was some scene in the square today," Clyde said, his voice friendly. "Sure was," Brenda said, refilling his cup. "Never seen anything like it. Poor little Billy." "Billy? That's the boy's name?" Clyde asked. "Billy, yeah. Sarah Miller's boy. Sweet kid. Quiet. And the man, Hank Miller. He's really the father?" Clyde kept his tone light, curious. Brenda lowered her voice. "Well, that's what Sarah said right out loud. And you know, the timeline fits. Sarah left town for a long while, years and years ago. Came back with a baby. Never said a word about the daddy." She wiped the counter with a cloth. "Looks just like him, don't he? When he's not all pale like that." "He sure does," Clyde said, smiling. He left a generous tip on the counter. "Say, where does Sarah live? I'd like to drop off something for the boy. Maybe some candy or a toy. He must have had a scary day." Brenda's kindness overrode her caution. "Oh, that's thoughtful of you. They're out on Old Post Road, the little blue house at the very end. Can't miss it." "Old Post Road. Thank you, ma'am." Clyde gave her a warm smile. He paid his bill and walked out to his plain, rented sedan. He did not drive toward Old Post Road. He drove to the edge of town and parked where he had a clear view of both the road to Sarah's house and the main street leading to Hank Miller's place. He took out his notebook. He wrote, "Asterisk, subject confirmed. Name, Billy Miller. Location confirmed. Ability, physical absorption, transfer of pathological states. Effect on subject, immediate onset of ingested condition. Parental conflict present. Opportunity for acquisition. High." He closed the notebook and watched the sun begin to set over the dry fields. He would need to make contact with the father first. A man like Hank Miller, a man of business, would understand a proposal. The big house on the hill was silent. Hank Miller stood in front of the old iron safe in his study. He turned the dial with fingers that no longer shook. The heavy door swung open. Inside, stacked in neat rows, were the gold bars. They gleamed dully in the lamplight. This was the pile. This was what he had spent his life building. This was what he had promised to anyone who could heal him. He had been healed. The boy had taken the deal. Hank reached in and picked up one of the heavy bars. It was cold and solid in his hand. He thought about carrying it to the little blue house on Old Post Road. He thought about handing it to Sarah. "He's your son," she had said. The gold bar felt like dirt. It felt like nothing. He put it back and shut the safe door. The click echoed in the empty room. He did not sleep that night. He sat in his leather chair and looked out the dark window. He kept seeing the boy's face, white as milk. He kept hearing the weak, cold whisper. "Does your bones not hurt anymore?" When the sky began to lighten, Hank got up. He drove to the clinic in the next town over. He did not ask for the doctor who had given up on him. He went to a younger doctor, a man new to the area. "I need you to come with me," Hank said, his voice leaving no room for argument. "Is someone unwell, Mr. Miller?" the doctor asked. "My son," Hank said. The words felt foreign and heavy on his tongue. An hour later, Hank's truck pulled up in front of the little blue house. The doctor's small car followed. Hank marched up to the door and knocked. Sarah opened it. She saw Hank. Then she saw the doctor with his black bag standing behind him. Her face hardened. "No," she said. "Sarah, he's a doctor. He can help." "You don't get to decide what helps him," she said. I said no. From inside the house, they heard a cough. It was a weak, scratchy sound, but it went on and on. The young doctor stepped forward, his face kind. "Ma'am, I'm Dr. Lewis. I just want to listen to his lungs. It won't hurt him, I promise." Sarah looked from the doctor's earnest face back to Hank. The coughing continued. Her shoulders slumped, just a little. The fear for Billy was bigger than her anger. "Fine," she whispered. "But you stay right here," she said to Hank. pointing to a spot on the porch. Sarah led Dr. Lewis into the small bedroom. Hank waited on the porch, staring at his own boots. Inside, Billy was propped up on pillows. His eyes were glassy. Dr. Lewis smiled at him. "Hello, Billy. I'm just going to take a quick listen, okay?" Billy nodded silently. The doctor put his stethoscope on Billy's chest and back. He took his temperature. He looked in his ears and throat. His friendly smile slowly faded into a look of deep confusion. "His lungs are clear," the doctor murmured, more to himself than to Sarah. "No fever, no sign of infection." He looked at Billy. "Can you tell me where it hurts, Billy?" "My bones," Billy said softly. "And my insides. It's all cold." Dr. Lewis sat back. He had no answer for that. He packed his tools back into his bag. In the main room, he spoke quietly to Sarah. "Medically, I can't find anything wrong, but he is clearly very unwell. It is puzzling. He should be in a hospital for more tests." "No hospital," Sarah said immediately, her voice firm. The doctor nodded, though he did not understand. He walked out to the porch where Hank stood waiting. "Well?" Hank asked. "I don't know," Dr. Lewis admitted. "There is no clear cause. I am sorry." Hank paid the man, and the doctor drove away. Hank turned back to the open door. Sarah was standing there, blocking it. "Satisfied?" she asked. Her voice was tired. Hank looked past her, into the dim house. He could see the edge of the bedroom doorway. "Can I see him? Just for a moment?" Sarah wanted to say no, but she was alone, and she was scared, and the doctor had just told her he knew nothing. She stepped aside. Hank walked into the bedroom. Billy was still awake, staring at the ceiling. "The doctor couldn't find it," Billy said, as if he had heard everything. "No," Hank said. He didn't know what else to say. He saw a glass of water on the small table. "Do you need a drink?" Billy gave a small nod. Hank carefully picked up the glass and held it so Billy could sip from the straw. The simple act, helping his son drink, made his throat feel tight. "Thank you," Billy whispered. Hank put the glass down. He stood there, a large man filling the small room. "I am sorry you are sick, Billy." Billy looked at him. "It's not your fault," the boy said quietly. "I did it. I always do it. I make the hurt go away into me." The boy's words, so simple and so terrible, finally broke through the last wall inside Hank Miller. This child was sick because of him. This child had chosen asterisk to be sick because of him. And the boy wasn't even angry. Hank's vision blurred. He gave a quick, sharp nod, unable to speak. He turned and left the room, past Sarah and out of the house. He got into his truck and drove, not toward home, but just drove, with the hot wind blowing through the open window. At the Dust Creek gas station, Clyde Granger filled the tank of his sedan. An old man named Joe was cleaning the windshield. "Quiet town you got here," Clyde said, his voice friendly. "Usually is," Joe said. "Been some excitement lately, though." "I heard," Clyde said. He leaned against the car. "That little boy, Billy, his mother, she lives out on Old Post Road, all by themselves?" "Yep," Joe said. "Just the two of them. Sarah works shifts at the diner. Tough going, I'd imagine, especially now with the boy sick. Must be lonely out there," Clyde said, his eyes thoughtful. "No family to help?" "Nope, no family at all." Joe finished the windshield. "That'll be $35 even." Clyde handed him the money. No family at all. That was useful information. It meant fewer people to ask questions. He got into his car and drove slowly down the main street, his eyes taking in everything. He noted the sheriff's office, the diner, the quiet patterns of the town. He now knew where the boy lived. He knew the mother was alone. He knew the father was rich and guilty. All the pieces were on the table. It was time to make his first move. The front door of the big house on the hill opened before Clyde Granger could knock. Hank Miller stood there, his eyes narrowed. "What do you want?" Hank asked. He did not invite the man in. Clyde smiled, a polite, professional smile. "Mr. Miller, my name is Clyde Granger. I was in the square the other day. I saw what happened with your son." Hank's posture stiffened. "What about it?" "May I come in? I have a proposal that could help the boy." Hank hesitated. He did not trust the man's neat suit or his calm smile, but the words "help the boy" made him step back. He led Clyde into the study. Clyde did not sit. He looked around the room, his eyes briefly resting on the large safe. "I represent a group of people, a company. We are interested in unique medical cases. We have resources, the best doctors in the world, research facilities." "Get to the point," Hank said, crossing his arms. "The point is Billy," Clyde said. "What he did is remarkable. My employers believed they could understand it. They could study his condition, his ability, and perhaps even find a way to control it, to help him manage it. No more getting sick when he helps someone." Hank listened. The idea was tempting, a way to fix what he had broken. These doctors, they could cure what he has now? This cold sickness? Clyde spread his hands. "They could certainly try, with the right tests, in the right facility. We have a center in Delaware, very private, very advanced. We could take him there, give him the care he needs." "Take him there," Hank repeated, his voice flat. "For treatment," Clyde said, his smile unwavering. Hank walked to the window. He looked out over his land. He thought of Sarah's furious eyes. He thought of Billy's quiet trust. He tapped his boot heel 3 times on the floor. He turned back to Clyde. "You want to take my son to Delaware?" "For his benefit," Clyde said. "No," Hank said. Clyde's smile did not falter, but it cooled. "I assure you, the offer is genuine. We only want to help." "I said no," Hank repeated, his voice firmer. "You don't lay a finger on that boy. You don't go near him. The answer is no. Now get off my property." For a moment, Clyde just looked at him. Then he gave a small, polite nod. "Of course. I understand your caution. If you change your mind, I'm staying at the motel on the highway." He placed a plain white business card on the edge of Hank's desk. It had only a phone number printed on it. Hank did not touch the card. He watched Clyde walk out, get into his sedan, and drive away. Sarah was heating a can of soup on the small stove when she saw it. A car. A plain, light-colored sedan. It was parked way down Old Post Road, under the shade of a lone pecan tree. It was too far away to see who was inside. Her hand froze on the spoon. It had been there for over an hour. Billy was dozing on the couch in the front room. She walked over and pulled the thin curtain closed, her heart beating faster. "Mom?" Billy's voice was sleepy. "Why is it dark?" "Just resting our eyes, baby," she said, trying to sound calm. She peeked through a tiny gap in the fabric. The car was still there. She thought about Hank's visit. She thought about the strange doctor. Now a strange car. The world was pressing in on their small, fragile life. The secret she had kept for 9 years was out, and now it was drawing attention like honey draws flies. She went to the closet and pulled out 2 old duffel bags. She laid them open on her bed. "What are you doing?" Billy asked from the doorway. He leaned against the frame, weak and shivering. "We might take a trip, sweetie," Sarah said, forcing a smile. "Would you like that? Maybe go see some mountains?" Billy looked at her. He knew her real smile from her worried smile. "Is it because of the man in the car?" Sarah stopped folding a shirt. She walked over and knelt in front of him. "What man, Billy?" "The man from town, the one who smiles with his teeth but not his eyes. He was watching us in the square. He's watching now." Billy said it softly, as if stating a simple fact about the weather. A cold fear, colder than Billy's sickness, washed through Sarah. Billy saw things. He felt things about people. She hugged him tightly. "It's going to be okay. We're just going to pack a few things, just in case." She worked faster, throwing clothes into the bags. She took the little money she had saved from the coffee can in the cupboard. She packed Billy's favorite book. The car was still out there when the sun began to set, its windows dark and blank. Sarah knew they could not leave in the dark, not with Billy so weak. They would have to wait for first light. She moved Billy's pillow and blanket to the floor in the back bedroom, away from the windows. "We'll sleep in here tonight, okay? Like a campout." "Okay, Mom," Billy whispered. He was too tired to ask more questions. Sarah sat on the floor with her back against the door, listening to every night sound. She heard the wind. She heard a distant dog bark. She did not hear a car engine start. But when she dared to peek an hour later, the sedan under the pecan tree was gone. Its absence did not make her feel safe. It made her feel watched. She knew they had to be gone by morning. The first light of morning found Sarah awake, still sitting with her back against the bedroom door. Billy slept fitfully beside her. The packed duffel bag sat by the front door, a silent promise to run. A truck engine rumbled outside, followed by the sound of car doors. Sarah crept to the window. Hank Miller's truck was in the yard. Behind it were two other cars. 3 people, 2 men and a woman, were getting out. They carried medical bags, real doctors. Hank walked up to the porch. His knock was softer this time. Sarah opened the door, her body blocking the entrance. "What is this, Hank?" "These are specialists, from Austin," Hank said. His voice was low, earnest. "They are the best. They know about rare conditions. Let them try." The woman doctor, Dr. Shaw, stepped forward. "Miss Miller, we just want to examine Billy. No needles today, just some simple tests. We want to help." Sarah looked at their faces. They looked tired and professional. They did not smile too much like Clyde Granger. Behind her, Billy began to cough, a weak rattling sound that seemed to shake up his whole small frame. The fear of the strange car warred with the fear of Billy's worsening sickness. The fear for his life won. "Just tests," Sarah said, her voice tight. "You don't take him anywhere." "Of course not," Dr. Shaw said. Sarah let them in. For the next 2 hours, the small house was full of quiet activity. The doctors took Billy's temperature and blood pressure. They used a small machine to look at his heart. They asked him many questions about the cold feeling. Sarah stayed by Billy's side, holding his hand. Hank waited in the main room, pacing slowly. Finally, the 3 doctors gathered in the kitchen with Sarah. Hank stood in the doorway. Dr. Shaw shook her head slowly. "His vitals are stable, but they are lower than they should be. Slow heart rate, low temperature. It is as if his whole body is in a state of extreme conservation, but there is no infection, no sign of disease we can measure." "What does that mean?" Sarah asked. "It means we cannot diagnose him with any known illness," one of the other doctors said. "His body is fighting something, but we cannot see what it is." "So you can't help him," Hank said, his shoulders slumping. "We can make him comfortable," Dr. Shaw said gently. "But to understand this, we would need different kinds of tests. Research. This is beyond our experience." She handed Sarah a card. "If his breathing changes, or if he cannot stay awake, call this number. Go straight to the hospital." The doctors packed their bags. They nodded to Hank and left, their cars kicking up dust on the dirt road. The house was quiet again. Sarah stood in the kitchen, staring at the card. Billy called out from the bedroom, his voice thin. "Mom?" "I'll be right there, baby," Sarah said. She went to the sink to get him a fresh glass of water. Hank saw his chance. He walked slowly into Billy's room. The boy was propped up, looking smaller than ever against the pillows. "Did the doctors fix it?" Billy asked. "No, son, they couldn't," Hank said. He sat carefully on the edge of the hard chair beside the bed. "It's okay," Billy said. "They usually can't." Hank didn't know what to say. He looked at his own large, rough hands. "Are you scared, Billy?" Billy was quiet for a moment. He nodded. "A little. It's a big cold, bigger than the others." He looked at Hank. His pale blue eyes were clear. "Are you mad I took your sick? I didn't mean to make a trouble." The question was like a knife in Hank's chest. No, Billy. I'm not mad. I'm grateful. And I'm sorry." "Mom says you didn't know about me," Billy said. "That's true, but I should have," Hank said. The words felt inadequate. "If I had known, I would have done things different." Billy just looked at him, as if trying to understand. "I'm glad your bones don't hurt," he said finally. Sarah came back in with the water. She saw Hank sitting there, saw the raw look on his face. "Hank," she said, her voice not angry, just tired. "You should go." Hank stood up. He reached out and very gently put his hand on top of Billy's head for just a second. "You rest now." He walked out of the house. He did not look back at Sarah. He got in his truck and drove, but not toward home. He drove to the sheriff's office. He needed to tell someone about Clyde Granger. Something about that man was wrong. From his parked car farther down the main street, Clyde Granger watched the 3 doctors leave. He saw the confusion on their faces. He smiled. They had failed. They didn't have the framework to understand. He watched Hank's truck leave Sarah's house and head toward the town. He saw it stop at the sheriff's office. His smile faded. That was a problem. Hank Miller was becoming protective. The father's guilt was getting in the way of a clean acquisition. Clyde started his car. The time for watching was over. The mother was scared and ready to run. The doctors had left. The father was distracted. The window was open. He would move tonight. Sarah finished zipping the second duffel bag. The house was dark except for a single lamp. Billy was dressed, sitting on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, watching her. "Where will we go, Mom?" he whispered. "Somewhere new," Sarah said, trying to sound sure. "Somewhere good for you." She didn't know where. She picked up the bags. They were heavy. She turned to help Billy stand up. A floorboard on the porch creaked. It was not the wind. It was a slow, careful step. Then another. Sarah froze. Her eyes met Billy's. His were wide with fear. He pointed a trembling finger toward the front window. The silhouette of a man passed by the curtain. Sarah dropped the bags. She pushed Billy toward the back bedroom. "Hide. In the closet. Now. Don't make a sound." Billy stumbled away, clutching his blanket. Sarah grabbed the heavy metal flashlight from the kitchen counter. She stood in the middle of the dark front room, her heart pounding. The doorknob turned. It was locked. There was a pause. Then a shoulder slammed against the old wood. The door jamb splintered with a crack. Clyde Granger stepped into the doorway, a calm, unpleasant smile on his face. "Miss Miller, we need to talk about Billy." "Get out of my house," Sarah said, raising the flashlight like a club. "I'm not here to hurt anyone," Clyde said, his voice smooth. He took a step inside. "But the boy needs to come with me. My employers can help him." "You're not taking my son." "It's not your choice," Clyde said. His eyes scanned the room, looking for Billy. Sarah swung the flashlight. Clyde dodged back and the metal just grazed his shoulder. His smile vanished. He grabbed for her arm. "Billy, run!" Sarah screamed, struggling against Clyde's grip. Hank Miller was driving back from the sheriff's office. The sheriff had promised to keep an eye out for Clyde Granger, but hadn't seemed too worried. Hank wasn't satisfied. He turned his truck onto Old Post Road. He saw the plain sedan parked haphazardly in front of the little blue house. He saw the front door hanging open, a dark hole in the wall. Hank's blood went cold. He slammed his foot on the gas. The truck roared into the yard, headlights flooding the front of the house. He saw two figures struggling in the doorway. Sarah was fighting a man, trying to keep him from getting inside. Hank did not think. He threw the truck door open and ran. Clyde heard the truck and turned. Hank's fist caught him square on the jaw. The force of the punch, fueled by a strength that was once again Hank's own, sent Clyde stumbling back off the porch and into the dirt. Hank stood over him, breathing hard. "I told you not to touch my family." Clyde wiped blood from his lip. He looked from Hank's furious face to Sarah, who was now holding the flashlight ready. He looked at the dark house where the boy was hiding. He knew the moment was lost. "This is a mistake," Clyde spat. "You have no idea what he is. You can't protect him from the people who will come after me." Red and blue lights flashed, painting the trees. The sheriff's car rolled into the yard, moving fast. The sheriff and his deputy got out, hands on their guns. "Everything okay here, Hank?" the sheriff called out. "This man broke into Sarah's house," Hank said, his voice loud and clear. "He was trying to take her boy." The sheriff walked over, looking at the broken door, at Clyde on the ground. "That true, mister?" Clyde stood up slowly, brushing dust from his suit. "A misunderstanding, Sheriff. I was concerned for the child's welfare." "He lied," Sarah said, her voice shaking with rage. "He wants to steal Billy for some company. He told Hank so." The sheriff looked at Hank, who gave a sharp nod. "He's a threat," Hank said. "All right," the sheriff said. "Clyde Granger, you're under arrest for trespassing and attempted burglary. You can explain it all down at the station." He nodded to his deputy, who stepped forward with handcuffs. Clyde did not resist. As the deputy led him to the car, he turned his head and looked right at Hank. "This isn't over," he said quietly. Then he got into the back of the sheriff's car. The lights moved away, taking Clyde Granger with them. The sudden quiet was heavy. Sarah sank onto the porch step, the flashlight clattering from her hand. Hank walked over to her, but didn't sit. "Is Billy?" he started. "He's here," Sarah said. She called out, her voice rough. "Billy, it's okay. Come out now." After a moment, the back bedroom door opened. Billy crept out, still wrapped in his blanket. He saw his mother. He saw Hank standing in the yard. He saw the broken door. He walked straight to his mother and buried his face in her side. She held him tight. Over Billy's head, Sarah looked at Hank. The old anger was still there, but it was mixed with something new, a raw, exhausted relief. He had come. He had fought. "Thank you," she said, the words sounding strange. Hank just nodded. He looked at the broken door, then at the dark road where the police car had disappeared. Clyde's words echoed in his head. Asterisk, you can't protect him from the people who will come after me. The immediate danger was gone, but Hank knew deep in his bones that the fight was not over. The story moved through Dust Creek like a summer wind. By mid-morning, everyone knew. They knew about the broken door. They knew about the stranger named Clyde Granger. They knew Hank Miller had fought him off. Most shocking of all, they all now knew for certain that Billy was Hank's son. People talked about it over coffee at the diner. They talked about it at the gas station. They saw Sarah in the hardware store buying wood to fix her door, and they nodded to her with a new respect. They saw Hank, and he did not seem like a cold mountain anymore. He seemed like a man with a deep worry. Hank spent the morning in his study. He made phone calls. He called a real estate man in Lubbock. He called a business partner in Dallas. "I want to sell the north section," Hank said into the phone. "The 500 acres by the dry creek. Yes, fast. Get me the best price you can, but get it done." He hung up. He opened the safe and looked at the gold bars again. They were not enough. Money in the bank was not enough. He needed to turn all of it, every piece of his empire, into something that could help. Later that day, he drove back to Old Post Road. Sarah was nailing a new board across the broken part of the doorframe. She saw his truck and stopped, hammer in hand. Hank got out. He did not come to the porch. He stood in the yard. "I'm selling some land," he said. Sarah just watched him. "The money will be for you, for Billy, for doctors, for whatever he needs," Hank continued. "I don't want your money, Hank," Sarah said, but her voice was flat, not fiery. She was too tired for her usual anger. "It's not for you to want," Hank said. "It's for me to give. It's the only thing I know how to do." He looked past her into the house. "How is he?" Sarah's shoulders slumped. She put the hammer down. "Worse. He sleeps most of the time now. When he's awake, he just says it's cold." She wrapped her arms around herself. "The doctor said there's nothing they can do here." Hank took a step closer. "What if there are doctors somewhere else? Not like that Snake Granger. Real doctors, specialists, in a big hospital." "We can't afford that," Sarah whispered. "I can," Hank said. Sarah was silent for a long time. She looked at her house. She looked at the dust. She thought about running, but Billy was too sick to run now. She had run out of choices. "Why?" she asked finally. "Why are you doing this?" Hank took off his hat and ran a hand through his hair. He looked old. "Because he's my boy," he said, his voice rough. "And I wasn't there for him before. I have to try now." Inside, Billy began to cough. It was a weak, scratching sound that didn't seem to end. Sarah turned toward the sound, her face pinched with fear. When she looked back at Hank, her eyes were wet. "Okay," she said, the word barely audible. "Okay, find the doctors." Hank nodded, a hard, sure movement. "I'll make the calls. We'll leave as soon as we can." He drove away, a man with a new purpose. Sarah went inside to Billy. She sat on the edge of his bed and brushed the hair from his damp forehead. "Mom?" Billy murmured, his eyes half open. "Yes, baby?" "Is Dad coming back?" Sarah's breath caught. She had not called Hank that. Billy had chosen the word himself. She swallowed hard. "Yes," she said. "He's coming back. He's going to help us." A tiny, tired smile touched Billy's lips before he fell back asleep. At the sheriff's office, Clyde Granger sat in a cell. He had made one phone call. He spoke quietly for 2 minutes. He hung up and sat calmly on the narrow cot. He was not smiling anymore. He was waiting. His employers knew where he was. They knew the situation had changed. They would decide what to do next. Clyde just had to wait for new instructions. The old truck was packed by 10 the next morning. Hank had loaded their bags and a cooler with water and food. Sarah carried Billy to the front seat, wrapped in 2 blankets. He was so light it scared her. Hank stood before he got in the driver's side. He looked at Sarah, then at Billy's pale face watching from the truck. "I am making a new promise," Hank said, his voice clear in the quiet yard. "To both of you. I am going to use everything, all my money, every last dollar, to find a way to help Billy. I am not doing it for gold. I am doing it because he is my son, and I was wrong." Sarah listened. She heard the truth in his words. It was not a business deal. It was a father's promise. She gave a small, slow nod. It was not full trust, but it was a start. They drove for 2 days. Billy slept most of the way, waking only to drink sips of water. Hank drove, his hand steady on the wheel. Sarah watched the land change from dry Texas flatness to green hills. The hospital was in a state called Colorado. It was a quiet building surrounded by tall pine trees. The doctors there were different. They did not wear stiff suits. They spoke softly. A doctor named Miriam met them at the door. Her eyes were kind. "Hello, Billy," she said. "We're going to try to make you feel less cold." They gave Billy a room with a big window. The nurses were gentle. They ran tests, but they did not seem confused by the results. They nodded, as if they had seen hard things before. "His body is fighting the sickness he took in," Dr. Miriam explained to Hank and Sarah in a small office. "It is a real sickness, but it works in a way we do not fully understand. His system is overwhelmed. We cannot cure the uncurable, but we can help his body be strong while it fights. We can make him comfortable. We can support him." "Will he live?" Hank asked the question, his voice tight. "He is fighting very hard," Dr. Miriam said. "We will help him fight. That is all we can do." Hank sold more land over the phone. He paid for the hospital. He rented a small apartment nearby for Sarah. He stayed in a hotel. Every day, Hank came to the hospital. At first, he just sat in the chair in the corner of Billy's room. He watched the machines. He listened to Billy's shallow breathing. After a week, Billy was a little stronger. The deep cold feeling was still there, but it was not getting worse. One afternoon, Billy was awake and looking at a picture book a nurse had brought. Hank was in his usual chair. "Would you like me to read that?" Hank asked. Billy looked at him, then nodded. He held out the book. Hank took it. He cleared his throat. He began to read the story about a lost dog finding its way home. His voice was rough at first, then it grew smoother. Billy listened, his eyes on the pictures. When the story was finished, Billy was quiet. He looked at Hank for a long moment. "Thank you," Billy whispered. Then after a pause, he said, "Thank you, Dad." The word hung in the quiet room. Hank's breath caught. He looked at his son. He nodded, unable to speak past the sudden tightness in his throat. He reached out and carefully put his hand over Billy's small one on the blanket. Sarah stood in the doorway, unseen. She heard the word. She saw the look on Hank's face. It was not the look of the richest man in Dust Creek. It was the look of a man who had finally found something money could not buy. She did not smile, but the hard knot of anger in her chest loosened, just a little. The fight was not won. Billy was still fragile in the hospital bed, but for the first time, they were all on the same side. 3 months later, Billy walked out of the hospital. He did not run. He walked slowly, holding his mother's hand on one side and his father's hand on the other. The Colorado air was cool, but the sun was warm on his face. "No more cold inside?" Sarah asked him, bending down. "A little bit," Billy said. "But it's a small cold now. I can think past it." "Doctor." Miriam walked out with them. "He will always be a fragile boy," she said to Hank and Sarah. "His body has been through a great deal. He will get tired easily. Colds and fevers will hit him harder than other children, but he is not dying. He is living, just differently." "Thank you, Doctor," Hank said. He shook her hand. The money had paid for the care, but the care had been real. They did not get in the truck to go back to Texas. They walked down the street to a small house with a green lawn and a tall pine tree in the back. Hank had rented it. It was clean and quiet and close to the hospital. Sarah stood in the living room. It was not much, but it was theirs. For the first time in 9 years, the word theirs included someone else. "It's a good house," Sarah said. "It's a fine house," Hank agreed. Billy went straight to the back window. "There's a bird feeder," he said. "Can we put seeds in it?" "We can do that," Hank said. "Maybe tomorrow." That night, they ate dinner at a small table in the kitchen. Sarah made soup. Hank cut the bread. Billy ate all of his. It was the most he had eaten in one sitting since the town square. After dinner, Billy sat on the couch. Hank sat in a chair nearby, reading the local paper. Sarah washed the dishes. "Dad," Billy said. Hank lowered the paper. "Yes, son? Will you read to me, like at the hospital?" Hank put the paper down. "Go get your book." Billy got the book about the lost dog. He brought it to Hank and sat on the floor beside his chair. Hank began to read. His voice was still rough, but it was softer now. Sarah finished the dishes. She stood in the kitchen doorway, drying her hands on a towel. She watched them. She saw the way Billy leaned his head against the side of Hank's chair. She saw the way Hank's large finger followed the words on the page so Billy could see. The fear that had been her constant companion for so long was quiet. It was not gone, but it was sleeping. She was not looking for strange cars. She was not packing bags. She was just watching her son listen to his father read. When the story was done, Billy yawned. "Time for bed," Sarah said. Billy stood up. He looked at Hank. "Good night, Dad." "Good night, Billy." Billy walked over and gave his mother a hug. "Good night, Mom." "Sleep well, baby." Sarah walked Billy to his new room and helped him get into bed. She tucked the blankets around him. She kissed his forehead. His eyes were already closing. She walked back into the living room. Hank was still in his chair, looking at the empty fireplace. "He looks better," Hank said. "He does," Sarah said. She sat on the couch. They sat in silence for a while. It was not an angry silence. It was just quiet. "I sold the last of the land," Hank said finally. "The big house, too. The money is in an account. For Billy. For his future. For whatever he needs." Sarah nodded. She twisted the silver ring on her finger. "What will you do?" she asked. Hank looked at his hands. They were clean. There was no dirt under the nails. "I don't know yet. Find some work, I suppose. Something here." "You don't have to stay right next to us," Sarah said, but her voice held no push. It was just a statement. "I want to stay," Hank said. He looked at her. "If it's all right." Sarah looked at him. She saw the man who had left her long ago. She saw the man who had fought a stranger on her porch. They were the same man, but he was different now. She was different too. "It's all right," she said. The next morning, Billy sat at the kitchen table, coloring. Hank filled the bird feeder with seeds and hung it on the pine tree. Sarah made pancakes. Through the window, they watched as a bright blue bird landed on the feeder. Billy smiled. No one was rich. No one was powerful. They were just three people in a small house. The fight for Billy was over. Their new life had begun.